Welcome to Sky Sports News. Today I'm interviewing Jess Dads on current issues in sport. So we'll start off with drugs. What are the main substances taken in sport?
One of the main things that happens in sport is blood doping, where blood is taken out of the body, which is red blood cells being taken out and then put back in. This means there's more oxygen going around the body, so the body can perform better. Anabolic agents are also used, hormones and narcotics.
What sports are these most prevalent in?
I would say the most prevalent sport is athletics. It's an individual sport. I think individual sports, it occurs more in than team sports because you're only letting yourself down if you're caught, whereas a team there's a bit more of an ethos of we play for each other, which means you wouldn't do anything to jeopardise the whole team. Athletics has been a big drug scandal for years. It's just come out that in the 2009 World Championships, as of now, there's 50% of the athletes that competed then have now been banned for drugs. Another point is every man to run under 9.79 seconds for a 100 metre sprint, apart from Usain Bolt, has been caught doping at some point in their life, either one doping ban or two.
What do the supporters think of drugs in sport?
The supporters are obviously very against it. That's why someone like Usain Bolt, who's never been caught drug cheating, is such an idol for them because he's a clean athlete. This was shown as the recent World Championships when Justin Gatlin won the gold in the 100 metres. The crowd had booed him before he came out, so when he was introduced, and then on the podium he was booed. There's children watching this, they want their future generations of kids to aspire to be people like Usain Bolt, of clean athletes who try their best and win, not people like Justin Gatlin who cheat their way to the top.
What has been done to stop this?
There has been quite a few things done to stop this. Obviously, Russia's being the main thing, the big Russia drug scandal, which was a nationwide event. This meant that it was done through the government, and the governing bodies were involved in this. They knew what was going on, they didn't wipe it out, they knew, they supported it. This led to a blanket ban at the Paralympics in 2016. Obviously, this made a statement of how unacceptable it is because none of them were allowed to compete.
So we'll move on to child protection now. What is child protection?
Child protection is keeping children safe in training, in games, in the changing rooms, getting to matches, home from matches, and around the sporting environment.
Why do we need child protection in sport?
Child protection is needed because these kids, they play, for example, rugby starts at under 7s. They're only 5, 6, 7 years old. They need protecting, they don't know right from wrong, and they need adults to support them. There needs to be background checks done. So say a coach turned up to a session and said, I'd like to help out, I'm happy to volunteer every week, come along and help. They need to be thoroughly checked, CRB checked, which means a background check on their past history, any criminal record or anything, which would put the children in harm's way if the person was to coach them.
What rules are there to protect children?
One of the main things is in rugby union. Now, adults are not allowed to hold tackle bags for children. This, I would say, is a bit of an extreme, but this does mean that the contact between children and adults is limited. You're obviously not allowed, say you're coaching basketball, you wouldn't be allowed to touch a child inappropriately, but to help them throw a shot, you'd have to ask and maybe do the demonstration with another coach or an older player. There are some positives and negatives to this. Obviously, the positives are all your coaches are checked, there could be no issues, which means later on down the line you're clearing your back. Obviously, there's also risk assessments. The whole aim is to keep the children safe. However, the negatives of this is it does make it harder to coach. Sometimes, for example, line-out lifting in rugby is very hard to coach without putting your hands physically on a player. This means it's harder. This also means technique might not be taught properly, or you might need more coaches to then show it on each other rather than on the players.
So now we'll move on to racism. What is racism and how is it in sport?
Racism is prejudice and discrimination directed against someone of a different race, believing your one race is superior. This in sport, I would say this has got less in sport, but this is, for example, in the 1800s you weren't allowed to compete on the same team. If you're a different race, you had to have separate teams. This obviously was just dependent on races, so this is racism.
What are your what are your feelings towards it? Does it affect your sport?
Obviously, I think it's an awful event to have happened. I think we've come through it now a lot more than we had in the past. I believe that everybody should be able to play together equally, regardless of your race. Personally, it doesn't affect rugby that much. I think this is because the teams that are very good, i.e. New Zealand, Australia, have people from all different backgrounds there. Also in England, the crowd is very respectful, there's no racist chants, there's no offensive language from the crowd. I think this comes from, there's a lot of respect in rugby. People respect each other, people respect players, and teammates respect each other.
Can sport help in the fight against racism?
I think sport can help. So take a team sport like rugby, you've got people from all over the world, different races, different nationalities, different religions playing together. This shows team unity and how it doesn't matter what race you are, you can still achieve.
Are these effective?
I think it is effective in sport. That there's certain initiatives in place now. Show racism, the red card is a big one in football. This raising awareness that racism is not okay. You'll be sent off the pitch. Fan, steward, player is all not okay, not acceptable all over. Kick racism out of football is also another thing. It's also just raising awareness. These are effective as they are showing how it's not okay and it won't be tolerated. However, it's that effective in terms of what to do if you see this happening, or in terms of if you're in a football crowd and chance happened, or what to do and what actions to take.
How much has changed in racism in sport?
I think we've come a long way from having segregated teams. However, obviously it's still there. The recent case with Mark Sampson, who was allegedly racist to one of the England female football players, this was put aside as, oh, it was just a joke, which is why I think racism's not as blatant in sport anymore. It's not as tolerated in terms of blatant racism. However, casual racism in terms of if you're making a joke or it was only banter is still very much prevalent.
Finally, we're going to talk about sexism. So what is sexism and how is it prevalent in sport?
Sexism is the inequality between men and women. This is in sport as there's different, obviously you play different, men and women don't play the same team together and stuff. However, there's different rules for women, in some sports for women to play, or women can't compete in certain sports just due to their gender.
What are your feelings towards it and does it affect your sport?
I always think it's awful. There's no difference between men and women, so why does this affect the sport they play or the amount of money they get paid to play their sport? In women's rugby, the funding's recently been cut for the 15-a-side England team. They were all made professional a year ago and their funding, as of the World Cup, just gone, it's just been cut. This isn't due to lack of money. The England RFU have loads of money. They afford to put firework displays on at each England men's match and they fly first class, but they can't even afford, but they say they won't spend the money on affording to pay the women. Also in swimming, female swimmers are still not allowed to swim 1,500 metres, which is a mile. They're limited to the 800-metre race. Katie Ledecky, who's one of the American national swimmers, she's world champion, 800, 400, but she's not allowed to swim the 1,500 just because she's a female. She says there's no real reason for this, just old tradition and old outdated sexism.
Well, can sport help in the fight against sexism?
I think sport can help. It's a platform to show that men and women are equal and they are the same, and women can do anything men can do. Also, sports stars can help. For example, Andy Murray's the main one. He speaks out against casual sexism a lot. For example, when at Wimbledon last year, a reporter said about the USA guy who was the first American to ever reach quarterfinal. He corrected him. He was actually in the male American to reach quarterfinal, as the Williams sisters had won countless trophies between them.
What initiatives are there in place for sexism?
The main one I would say is This Girl Can. This Girl Can's an initiative to show how women are equal and how they can do anything. They can participate in sport. They aren't weak and they only have certain roles in society. They can play sport and they can enjoy it.
Are these initiatives effective?
I would say this initiative is quite effective. It was a worldwide campaign which attracted a lot of attention. There's big posters up with everyday people getting involved as well as elite athletes that show that any woman can play sport. You don't have to be just at the top of your game.
How much has changed in sexism in sport?
Obviously a lot has changed. In the first ever Olympics, women weren't even allowed to compete, and now more women's team than ever. Before the 2014 Rugby World Cup for women, there were 15,000 registered players. In the 2 years after that, another 11,000 registered, which is nearly double than before. Also, Norway have just agreed to pay their men and women's teams the same money to play football, which is obviously a big step in terms of gender equality.
Cool. Thank you for talking to us today.
You're welcome.